Hello, my name's Caden, and this is my book report on the book Boundaries by Henry Cloud and John Townsend. I actually got the electronic version. That's just kind of how I read books. But the main thesis of this book is it's really on the title page. It's when to say yes and how to say no to take control of your life. But to go in a little more detail on that, I think that the main point of the book was to show how the boundaries we have and the ones that we lack not only affect us, but affect those around us as well in the relationship that we have with God. Going throughout this book and reading it, it not only brought my attention to some of the boundaries that I'm lacking or that I have put up too hard, because I'm a very state how I am kind of person. But what I really enjoyed about the book is that it brought attention to the points like this, not only from a Christian viewpoint, but it also came at it from a psychological perspective. And it was really interesting because I feel you go on Amazon and you look at the reviews of this book, and half of them are oh, this is fantastic, it's a great Christian book, or the other half is well, I thought it was only a psychological book. So I think that's one of the things that is kind of deceiving, I guess, when you go into reading it, because I knew that it was going to be a Christian book because you see him at Mardel's, and that's why I picked this book actually, as I was in the other day getting my brother some of his books for his homeschooling stuff. And I saw it and I was oh, I'll read that. So just a couple other of the topics. I really enjoyed this book, first off. I really, really did. I like how the book talks about the basics of boundaries and what life would be like without them. And earlier on in the book, it actually uses a story of what life is not using good boundaries or having too many boundaries, and how that would affect somebody. And that comes into play later on in the book. But it also talks about, at least in the first part, it talks about the consequences of developing poor boundaries. And it goes back to it a little bit later in the book, but that's mostly the first third, I guess, of the book is based upon. And I would say that the second part is more about the day-to-day boundaries and the conflicts that can occur, and then why we need good, healthy boundaries put out in our life. And so it gives us a couple different scenarios, there was a part in the book that talked about, boundaries with friends, boundaries with family, boundaries with, relationships and stuff like that. And I think the last part is about how to, I know that the last part is more about how to apply the boundaries that you learned earlier on in the first two portions. And it tells you how to apply them and where to place them and when it's too much and when it's too little. So it's a very good read. I feel there's something in it for just about everyone. And you might say, well, I'm actually really good. Read the book. It's really, really, really good. I'm going to talk about some more points. I know I'm right on that time limit amount, but what else did I put down? Okay, so it also talked about the power to stand up for yourself and to say no to things of the world and say yes to things of God. So it's more of an open perspective on this, but it really shows you that here's something that a lot of people don't get, is that boundaries, it talks about this in the book, but boundaries are not an act of being selfish or being rude to somebody. But they discuss in the book how it's more of a key to living the joy-filled life that we're blessed to and called to have as Christians. And I really, really enjoyed reading through that and seeing that. And I actually think that my roommate just got back from class, so I'm going to probably end it here. But what I really enjoyed was that the way that it addressed the story from earlier in the book at the very end of the book. And it had the same scenarios go on, but it applied the boundaries that it taught from the second chapters and applied through, or the second portion of the book and applied in the later portion. But it ran through the same scenario, and it showed where, how much better it was, and it was. So I know I'm going to apply some of the things that I've learned in the book, and have some other people read it because it's a fantastic read.